Welcome to this section. In this section, I'll be taking a look at styling. Now, I think you can all look at this page and see that, wow, it just looks terrible. It's just black and white. What can I do literally to make it a little bit palatable? We do that using what we call a style sheet. And a style sheet is something we declare usually in between the head tag. You can notice this third line here has head. It also has a closing head tag. And we shall use the link keyword. And here we shall create a simple file called style.css. And when we refresh, there are no styles yet. Okay, so what do we do? Let's create a new file, and we do that using file followed by new. Then let's quickly save it. Command S or Control S. Let's call it style.css. And in style.css, I could maybe do a bunch of things. Let me clean up my code. I could perhaps make everything inside body a different color. Let's try that. So I could say body, and with CSS you can declare the element that you want to change something about. Now let's change the color. Let's say we want red. We can save that, go back here, make sure that our file is saved, and perhaps refresh our page and check this out. Everything turned red. Okay, that's one style. Okay, red is a bit nasty. CSS allows us to style individual elements. So we do that by adding an attribute to these elements. And let's add something called a class attribute. A class attribute is added using the keyword, and let's call this heading. Okay. When we refresh, our previous styles are gone. So after making a corresponding attribute change to your HTML file, you head over to your style sheet, and using a simple notation, we start class names using a dot followed by heading, some spaces, curly braces, and then let's give it a font size of maybe 30 pixels, right? Then when we refresh, notice that it is slightly reduced. Let's add something else. Let's give it a color, and let's say we want it to be something called aquamarine. When we save, refresh, the color changed. CSS classes and selectors are very important. We can use them for a bunch of things, such as styling. We can use them to work with something called jQuery. jQuery is a library that allows us to select a bunch of stuff and do things to it. In the future, we'll probably take a look at jQuery and how it's used. But for now, this is okay. And I could design our sections in a way that there are spaces between them. So to add extra space, we could use something called the margin bottom property. Let's add a space of about 10 pixels. Save, and when we refresh, notice there are some spaces. I could classify this as something like bio, and when you're giving class names, try as much as possible to give logical names, such as bio if you're going to do something bio related. If there's a feed of data, you could also call something like feed as a class name, and so on. So for a bio, we can do .bio since it's a class, and let's introduce a new property, floating. This pushes content to the right. Okay, let's close our tag. And what do you notice about this? I'm using slashes, forward slashes. Forward slashes are used as comments. and anything that follows a forward slash is not executed, most developers will use these to communicate or write documentation. So let's refresh, and nothing happens. Okay, so how do we debug when nothing happens? Let me introduce you to something called the Chrome Developer Tools. If you're using Chrome, you'll have them. You can do that by right-clicking and clicking Inspect Element. And in there, you'll see something like this. Okay, so apparently it's not seeing our float, but it should ideally push content to the right. So let's circle back and look at our bio. We probably need to use a different way of commenting. Sorry about that. I use // and a star. Then when you refresh, notice that our thing was pushed to the right. It's on the same line as our next section. What if you do not want that section to, to show up? That we can use something called a clear float to clear the section. So let's add something. Let's call this body, or let's just call it main content. Let's give it the name main content, and go back to our style sheet, create main dash content, and in there we shall use a special attribute called clear, and we shall clear both. When we refresh, our content is not on the same line as our first content. I'm just going to comment this out, make it obsolete or not work, so that you can see. Let's add another attribute to each of these to make it a little bit distinctive. When you use, there's a tag called an HR tag, which just provides an underline. Notice that it is only underlining the part that says I was born in 1850, but it hasn't underlined bio. So what's wrong with this thing here? It means every time we float our div elements or our section elements, another section attribute I haven't talked about is called the div tag. This is a div tag, pretty similar to section, but section has more of a definite ring to it. So let's uncomment our code from before. Do that by deleting the asterisks. And when we refresh, you'll notice that I'm a detective, still on the same line as this is a div tag. So we'll have to do something like add the div as well. And then when we refresh, our div clears out the float from the top. Now, styling can involve quite a bunch of things, but I'll always encourage you folks to learn how to use frameworks. Frameworks make design a lot easier rather than reinventing the wheel. There'll be a few exercises on designing some cooler looking user interfaces compared to this, but I just want to quickly show you a bunch of things. Thank you.